Churchfront?
Oh, we even get one of those?
Oh my goodness.
So
We just have to clap in our studio.
First, I want to say how proud I am of your guys' podcast studio setup.
Dude, they did a really good job with
Yeah.
this.
This is top notch.
They really did do a good job with this.
I feel pampered here
Yeah.
as a production
Yeah.
AV guy.
Yeah, especially considering, so when we do ours, I set it up, I cut it live with a stream deck in front of me,
Yeah.
I aim the cameras, and then try and talk at the same time.
and
So
hold a
this is
conversation.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
I respect the grind. Are we recording right now?
Yeah, of course. That's how we
We're
roll.
always in the red.
Yeah.
We're
So
always-
for those, that's, a lot of our viewers are AV. They're in worship and production. They love the tech. A lot of churches are trying to build podcast setups like this. I think podcasting is a great medium. Hence, we're doing that right now. But yeah, we've got these Canon C80s. Did you know these like the models of cameras and stuff like that?
It would
do
be
now.
impossible for me to know less about the models. Of the
Yeah,
cameras.
they're really good.
Like,
the color science, the lenses look amazing. You got some servo lenses there. I like the program monitor. You've got this is where you react to stuff, I guess, if you're playing videos
Yeah.
on the other monitor.
This is the content they come for.
that's great, man.
And-
This is what the
I'm gonna
people
feel
need to know.
real dumb
And-
this podcast. I
No,
can already tell.
this is what we do though at Churchfront. We educate on the AV side, and then this diffusion of the light looks amazing.
Yeah,
so,
it
no,
does. The
mainly-
diffusion light is important to me.
It helps with the color science. It helps with the color science.
I really asked them for this
Have you
diffusion light.
have you ever heard the phrase color science before?
Nope.
Today?
I've heard the two
See?
separate words.
Okay, but never together.
Yeah, it's the
So
science.
let's talk about empowerment.
That servo lens is very empowered. Right?
Servo lens. That sounds. Never mind.
So,
Yes.
my first question is: are you guys using AI on a regular basis right now
That's
in
your
your
first
life
question?
and ministry? And then, if so, how? You don't have to be, but if you are, how are you?
100% I am. So,
Every day.
so I'll just tell you, like, you are. I'm
Every day.
interested to see how
Yeah.
you are. So what I've started doing is I'll use it now. I want to give like some heavy caveats. But I do like some heavy caveats. I use it as like a high-powered research assistant. So I'm using Grok Heavy on message prep, and like here's an example. I do this every week right now. I start message prep, and it's the same prompt. I do it both for that and for the Live Free Pod, and I'll go. Give me 20 interesting facts about, and then I'll put in the passage, and then I'll say that are historical, cultural, theological, archaeological, linguistic, or biblical, something like that, that most Christians wouldn't know. And then honestly, man, like it's remarkable how frequently I actually get usable, amazing stuff. Now, what I have learned is that you got to double check it. So, because it'll lie to you.
Yeah.
So I'll get it and then I'll double check it, but it's no different than, let me just say, like, no sense in trouble. There's no different than having a great research assistant.
Yeah.
I feel less bad because every once in a while, I'm just as a volunteer, I preach at my very, very small, especially compared to this church. And so like 3-4 times a year, and it makes me feel less bad about using AI as a research assistant. I do the exact same thing.
Yeah. We use it for media,
Yeah.
content, cutting up videos. Like, we'll actually probably use it for this. Probably a short someone's watching right now was cut by AI.
Yeah.
Is that crazy? What about for like your worship ministry department?
Yeah, from just a practical day-to-day when I'm in meetings, it's a great organizer of the thoughts that I dumped into a note that I can copy over and say, hey, make this a bulleted highlight. Or I just started talking to
serious?
it. Yeah, I just started talking to it or uploading audio from, hey, can I record this meeting? And putting that into it, hey, summarize this for me.
Yep.
And then from just much like Pastor Josh, from a research perspective, it's just a great aggregator of different researching tools that helps me kind of see it all in one visual place. And then from a writing perspective, I'm always kind of curating, whether it's leadership talks for my team or vision things, that it just helps me take my redundancy, eliminate it, help my thoughts become a little clearer. talking to it on my drives has been fascinating.
Yes.
I'll just brain
Are
dump.
you serious?
Yeah,
Yes.
like literally my son Liam thought I was on the phone with somebody who had a rich British
Wait,
accent.
you don't have a Tesla, do you?
No, I just had it on. I had it on speakerphone. You hit it on the little voice thing. I said, "Hey, I'm thinking through this for our team. Help me organize. What are some best practices when you encounter
he's
this?"
so good.
And it just talks back to you like you're in a phone call. Like
Yes.
the lapse of thinking is very minimal.
Yeah.
Now,
Bro, they just
five is a
integrated
little-
Grok in all the new Teslas on the most recent
wow.
update. So like you can just be in your car in Tesla.
That's a reason to get one, Mary. That's my wife's name.
Dude, I told you I test drove that Cybertruck. Oh yeah, you were with
I was
me.
in it with you.
That's right.
And it
Yeah,
was
that's right.
amazing, and it made me
So like,
want
here's
one.
an example. I use it. You may think less of me. I'm just being honest with you. So like, literally in my personal time in the Word, I have my iPad there, and when something comes up in the passage, I will ask it questions, and it's like like this morning I'm in Matthew 17, and the Transfiguration passage.
Yeah.
And the first thing is this is probably not what you want to talk about. So this real fast.
No,
So
we love it.
it mentioned that like, hey, after 6 days, both Matthew and Mark mentioned after 6 days. It specifies that they go up the mountain for the Transfiguration. I was like, that's weird. So I was like, hey, and I said, think like a conservative evangelical Bible scholar. Why does Matthew 17 and Mark 4 mention 6 days? And it immediately was like, it's drawing a parallel between Moses going on the mountain. It was 6 days. He was on Sinai before. And then I'm like, and then the next thing I said, first of all, I was like, dang, that's amazing. I would not have noticed that on my own. And then the next thing I said, think like a conservative evangelical Bible scholar in concise bulleted form, list the similarities between Matthew 17 and the Moses Sinai incident in the Old Testament. And bro, it spit out like absolutely legitimately amazing stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, a great research assistant is how I use it.
From a content perspective too, it helps me if I've got a long form blog I'm writing or a carousel post. Hey, turn this into a thread,
Dang, I
kind of
need to do
oriented. Like, hey, help me take this, make it more concise for stories or whatever. From a
Yep.
content perspective, it cuts so many hours of work.
Sometimes I'll just ask it to write my sermon. I just read it.
You heard it here. There's a clip.
What song is every worship ministry playing right now? And help it be in the key of G. Go.
Bingo.
Yep.
Perfect.
It's funny because I just did a video on our channel like less than a month ago. I don't know. It's all blending together at this point, but it was 5 ways church should be using AI right now. And it was just like, I didn't even go into like the research assistant model. It was just like, hey, like you can take your content. Here's great ways to repurpose what you're already doing using AI to create things that would take you 2 or 3 assistants and hours and hours.
Totally.
And there were so many there's so much pushback right now in the church. Like, this is you shouldn't be doing this. Like there was comments on that video, like you shouldn't be putting this content out right now. What would you say to guys that are that hardcore against it? Like,
I just want to know why. Like, how is that different than me hiring docent to produce me a report on the similarities between Matthew 17 and the Moses Sinai? Like how it's just not different. Now you got to back check it.
Yeah. You can't go brain dead with it. I think people were probably making the same excuses when the internet came out. You're not sitting with a MacArthur commentary and studying it and parsing the Greek yourself. You know, Logos came out. The tools of our time don't change the depth and the richness and the content of what we're doing. It helps us actually bring it to the forefront quicker.
Yes.
And why not use that tool? You know, I think, it wasn't an original thought. I don't know that I've ever had an original thought.
Yeah.
And so I think to think so short-sighted of it as not a practical tool that can help cut hours of my week so I can actually be doing what I'm called to do, I'd take that all day long. You know, now I will say it's a bad songwriter.
Yeah.
Not that I tried.
It's
It
funny,
really is a
though.
bad song.
It's funny.
But again, how can I use the tool in a way that it could perform well? If I'm stuck on a phrase and I need some near rhymes, similar rhymes, or whatever, it can pop that out much quicker than Rhyme Zone or Rhyme Brain can, and it aggregates it in a way that's visually helpful for me. So I'm gonna use the tool.
I think it's the same skepticism we hear from sometimes in the church community or church leadership about technology in general. So that's why, I mean, you guys are very, like, you're embracing a lot of tech, like the room we're in now.
Well, we got
your
diffused lights.
The diffused lights.
We have color science. You need to have AI do ChatGPT say, talk to me like a fifth grader and explain color science.
I guess
it'll do it.
Okay, but here let's talk about let's dive in. Let's dive into it will actually do it really well.
Squirrel.
No, there's the fears that is out there. What fear? Like that's where I think that comes from. The critique people have about using AI. So, what do you guys fear about AI specifically in how it influences the church and how the church is led?
Yeah, well, I do think you got to have your head on a swivel. That's why I said you got to back test stuff because I think I saw right now at the time of the recording of this podcast, Grok is winning the AI race right now. It's not close. Grok 4 is better than ChatGPT 5, if I understand it right. I listened to a podcast about that last night.
Yeah.
So, but even Grok, I think it was saying there was something it was 17% or something like that of Grok data outputs were wrong. So it's when you're just asking for facts,
or what if they're intentionally misleading?
So that's my next thing. So number one is you may get bad info, but number two, right now, AI, all it is a large language model. So it's the outputs are only as good as the inputs. So it would be, if I understand the technology correctly, it would be very, very easy for a totalitarian regime to control what inputs are going into the large language models, which could heavily influence the outputs ideologically. So I think you got to be, real careful. But basically, dude, it's a tool. Be very skeptical of the outputs.
Yep.
There you go.
To any degree that the tool becomes the thing we serve, I'm not going to use it. But if it serves me, I'm going to use the tool. We can get in that same conversation with production. But that's the way I look at it. And it cannot replace what experience and time in the Word can. It cannot. There are things that the Spirit wants to illuminate in front of me that no AI engine can. And so if it's trying to replace that, that's probably a danger zone. But if it's a thing that's serving me and helping me do what I'm called to do better, more efficient, I'm going to use it.
I go on a Instagram every day, probably multiple times a day, more than I should. And a lot of times I see you there.
That's Jason Howerton and Carlos Arazo's fault.
Explain. Explain your guys' social media strategy. How is it so effective?
Yeah.
You put a lot of effort in resources to making content and how you capture it in this building and the auditorium in this room. So what are the best social media tips you'd have for fellow church leaders?
So I come from my background. I don't know what team you come from. It's as far as the church tradition that I came out of was Young, Restless, Reformed. Acts 29. John Piper.
That was very influential on my call to ministry back in the day. Is listening to guys like Driscoll. I was graduating college in 2012.
We've talked about the cross. You got the old Mars Hill cross.
The Mars Hill cross over there. Because I really appreciate communicators, preachers who really who aren't afraid about the intersection of culture and in the Bible and theology and helping people connect those dots.
What you just said is part of the reason that we do it. So anyway, the team I came out of was that. That team, the vibe from that team. So you guys probably know this, but every team, every theological tradition and church species, they all got their own different rules, and they're unspoken rules. The unspoken rule around why are our Reformed background churches is man, if you, at least pertaining to these things, all technology is just you trying to be flashy and showy and entertainment driven. So basically the Reformed world is institutionalized cynicism. That's if you just I'm not joking. That's the Death Star vulnerability of Reformed world. It's just we
i.e. me in college.
Yes, and me until way after college. Me. It's just we theologize cynicism. So technology is bad, worldly, sellout. You're just trying to be entertainment driven. Social media, when you get that you intersect the theologized cynicism with social media, and it's like,
Are these all the grumpy guys on X that I follow?
who?
The grumpy people on X that are like the Theo bros?
That's all Reformed world.
Yes.
That's all Reformed world, which I was.
Yeah.
I got some good things for being around there. I love like commitment to the word,
Yeah.
theological awareness. They just need to learn to hug somebody.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but the theologized cynicism applied to social media was really like, man, if you were a really humble man, you wouldn't want to do any self-promotion. You would keep a low profile, try not to be seen. And honestly, man, like, I just think that plays right into the enemy's hands. So Carlos Arazo, our legendary guy that oversees social media, walked into a digital content meeting probably 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. And he was like, hey, man, I really think you need to rethink how you do social media. And he was like, you should do this thing where you do this and you do, and he was like, you do a reel.
Yep.
And it needs to be 60 to 80 seconds. And he gave me this little formula and he was like, I think you'd be good at it. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. That sounds, it's not me. And he was like, well, hey man, like, here's what you need to understand. Data says your people are on social media for like 16 to 18 hours per week. So they're listening to everybody else talk about the world and beliefs and cultural axioms. And if you don't, then you're really kind of ceding like your sheep to the wolves. And I was like, well, then you're fired, Carlos. That's not a joke. I didn't say that. But no, really, I was like, man, it's okay. That's actually a rebuke. I needed to hear that. So we test drove it, and it worked. And
How many followers did you have at that time on your...
what do you think? Is he in here? How many? When we first started those things?
50, 20, 30.
50, 20, 30, 40, somewhere in that 20 to 40 range.
Okay.
And it worked. And and really is like, I kind of got my head around, like, one, I had to get over some internal things because it felt kind of grimy to me because it really did, like, that theologized cynicism. I was like, man, is this self-promoting? It just feels weird to me. But then as I kind of started seeing it, and I don't want to talk too long here, but what I started noticing is like, man, this actually serves like a helpful purpose in making disciples. And here's what I mean. I've heard people talk before about what the church does in making disciples is there's air war and ground war. And ground war is on the ground, making disciples, building strong families. That's discipling people. That's preaching the word. That's prayer. That's like, pastoral counseling, nitty gritty, on the ground stuff, making disciples. That's most of what the church should be doing. But just like in an actual war, if your team wins all the ground war, but the other team has aerial supremacy, like you have no air force, and every time you win a battle on the ground, their air force just comes in and bombs you to death, and you lose all the ground you just gained because you got no air war. So from a discipleship standpoint, ground war is making disciples, preaching the word, all the stuff we just said. Air war is contending for the faith once and for all delivered to the saints in cultural narratives. And I really have seen this, is that like if, and I'm not saying everybody's got to do what we do, because sometimes people interpret what I'm about to say as criticisms of other pastors. I'm not about that. I'm just talking about how I think about it. What I do feel like happens is if I did not do that, then every time we disciple people in that room, auditorium over there, and I'm preaching, then they walk out and they spend 18 hours a week on social media hearing about how secular progressive, the air they breathe, think about religion, faith, ideals, morals, ethics, all the things. And it's like, okay, man, I won a battle in there, and then they went out in the week, and because I didn't have an air war, the enemy just bombed all that away. So what I feel like social media does is this air war. I'm trying to have the conversations that are happening where they are happening. And a lot of the cultural conversations happen on social media. So we view social media as almost like the digital Areopagus. It's where Paul went in Athens, and that's where people spent all their time telling and debating new ideas. That's social media in our culture. So just like Paul went there, we want to go there. I got more I could say, but I've already talked too long. What would you say?
All of that.
Well,
Co-signed.
Going back to the part you said Carlos was the one who talked to you about this.
Guy over here. It's brilliant.
The
hey,
Hispanic,
Carlos.
the Hispanic Logan Paul.
Yeah, he doesn't.
That's cool.
He doesn't
He's
go by that
on
the analogy.
My bad. Sorry.
The thing that you went over that pretty quickly, like what he told you specifically about, like, hey, you have the phone and you just like look at it and talk to it and film it, like be kind of raw and real in even the way you produce that content, you're going to get some good results. So like practically,
Well, sometimes
break it down though. Like what's your system? What's your system?
I'm not doing that anymore. So now we were doing that for a minute, and then honestly, it took a decent amount of my time.
Yeah.
Every now and then, if there's like a cultural issue that I'm like, this feels important. Okay. Then I'll kind of throw something together. When I was doing it a lot, I would write a little script and stick it in BigVoo, the BigVoo app. He told me what to do.
Yep.
And so it's like, that's a little thing where it's like essentially a teleprompter on your phone. So I'm good. Like I'm bad at a lot of things. One of the things I'm good at doing is reading something and it doesn't look like I'm reading something. So, I would just be doing this little thing.
Yeah.
And put the script in there. Got to have a super grabby opening line. You got to have content where there's not even 1 second where people's attention can get drawn away.
Yep.
You got to have a mic drop last line, because when people have the mic drop last line, we can talk about this later on something else. It's emotion that puts people in motion. I'll say it one more time. Emotion puts people in motion. So then you have the mic drop last line and people are like, oh, dang, and then like, I want to share that, because they had emotion. It put people in motion. And then, those guys are really good at like, here's the super grabby little caption we'll do. And with these 3 emojis, that's not my thing. They figured that out.
Nice.
Can I ask one? So being probably by far the person with the smallest, like doing this the least amount of time, as I gotten into being on the YouTube channel and stuff like that, how do you balance caring enough that you want to reach people, create good content, win the air war, with not letting it bother you with the detractors? How do you balance that?
I think that's different people are wired differently. I think there's 2 things that kind of go into that. Is one, I think every guy's got to figure out his own pain threshold, and some of that's just natural, and some of that is learned. So and this is not a joke. Like I think I've been canceled like 5 times now, like actual like whatever. And this is the first couple times it happens. It's kind of like getting attacked by snowballs. The first time you ever get attacked by snowballs, you're like, oh, crap. And you kind of freak out. And then 5 minutes later, you kind of go, wait, nothing bad actually happened to me. I think I'm good.
Frozen water.
I think I'm good. yeah. And so, it's like the first couple times I freaked out a little bit. And then, the 4th or 5th time, it was like, okay, it's Tuesday. This will be done by Friday. And attendance will actually be up this week because people are going to want to know what I say this weekend. So some of that's just like, you kind of figure it out. And then what I will say that is probably a little for pastors, you got to have your head on a swivel, is it depends on your wife. Like there are a lot of guys, like I coach a decent number of pastors, and man, New Testament, we got Bible verses for this. Your ministry strategy changed when you chose your wife, and you got to figure that out. You got to reverse engineer your ministry strategy from your wife. Her frame, not her character. If it's a character issue, that's your job to pastor her through that and disciple her through that. But you got to consider her frame. Lord bless me with a fiery redhead who is naturally a fighter. So whenever that stuff happens to us, I'll take a walk with Jan at night, and I'll ask Jana like, "Hey babe, how you doing?" And usually her response is, "Go harder." And that's just who God gave me. Good woman. And I needed that.
Yeah.
And so those 2 things.
Yeah.
Cool.
So is most of
What would you say, Chris? Because
Yeah.
you walk with us through some of that stuff. You've probably seen some things there.
Yeah, I think the balance of understanding, if I don't say it, who will, that's a mantle to carry. We've all heard the phrase "new levels, new devils," and I think what I've learned through it is anybody listening who's in any support role of their senior pastor, and i.e. anybody on staff at a church who's not the senior pastor, has to understand that he carries a weight that I don't. And I may have done it 50 different ways, but God hasn't called me to steward that. And so I have to try to create an environment where he feels supported, knowing that, he's probably going to put his neck out there, and he's going to be the one responsible for all the flack. And so I don't engage in that way because I'm not called to it. But just because I'm not called to it doesn't mean that I can sit back and, I probably would have done it different because new levels, he's called to a different thing than I am. And so my response really is, how do I support it? How do I share it? How do I affirm it? How do I help? Because I think when you get the attack at first, like the snowball effect, that also happens downline to your team. And they're trying to figure out, dude, is PJ okay? Is everything fine? What's going to happen? And then we have to understand, no, this is what God's called him to. And how have we been called to help fight with him in our own way and hold his arms up, maybe when they get tired, or encourage to be the Jan on the walk. Hey, go harder. And then there's sometimes wisdom's like he's going to ask, and he's shown humility in saying, is now the right time to press on this? Is this something our people are feeling? Because I don't just want to do it for clicks. Is this the right time to push on it? And then telling them with grace and patience and say, maybe now's not the right time, or trusting that God's going to give him a vision and supporting it. And so I haven't been canceled, but I also haven't been called to carry what he's been called to carry. And so I think the word for me to inject in this is, your pastor's called to carry something you're not. Don't try to fight the fight and figure out how you would do it different, because you'd probably do it different. Figure out how you can support.
I think that's a good spot to break off into kind of the relationship conversation between the two of you, and how you guys manage a good relationship. We've talked about the fact that the worship pastor, worship leader role is one of the highest turnover roles in the church.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a worship
for
pastor.
real did. Why do you think
churches.
that is? Wait, I'm hijacking you. This is your
No,
podcast.
you go.
Why do you think that
Yeah,
is?
why do you think that is?
God woke me up the beginning of this year. My birthday's on December 31st, and he kind of gives me a new vision for the year as we're starting a new year, and I'm getting a year older. One more gray hair, one more new year. And the righteous indignation in me started when I was on Instagram, and a bunch of my worship leader friends around the same age were all of a sudden posting their real estate photos. And I'm like, why is so-and-so selling houses?
Yep.
Church needs that guy.
Well, the world doesn't need more realtors. And if you're a realtor, if you
God bless
have
you.
invested, God bless you. But why aren't worship pastors making it? I think a couple things happened in my generation. I think a lot of worship leaders got on stages to get bigger ones. Chris Tomlin, the worship ministry was becoming now a worship genre. And so I could lead in this little church, and I could one day elevate to a different level. And that's not what God has called us to as pastors first, who happen to pastor through music. And so I think when that doesn't happen for a worship leader, and that's the reason they got on, and I didn't get the record deal and I didn't have the song, I'm probably done and I'm going to go make more money elsewhere. I think there were a lot of senior pastors who knew that they needed worship as a component in their services, and so they just tried to find the most talented person and not the best pastor. So then when they got frustrated that leadership wasn't happening,
That's a big deal.
they just went and found somebody else. And or I think that there wasn't a higher mantle put on the worship pastor to be a pastor first. That when that guy got older or the muscle got weaker, as it, my vocal is a muscle. And with age, it changes. And now I look up across the table as a senior leader. Well, have you led anything other than songs? And maybe that's to the fault of the pastor who hasn't given them more, whether it's the title, I expect more of you. So that when they get into that transitional period of what am I going to do because my muscle isn't working the same way, I don't have another job for me in the church. And so they've left. So I've made it my mission, like my social media is like, how do I get the 20-year-old me to stay
That's
and
cool.
still be leading when he's 50?
Yep.
And I think some of those things anecdotally are probably at play, and we're losing a generation. But I do see a rich generation of 20-somethings getting back in for the right reasons and contributing at a high level. I think there also was probably a season where worship leaders probably felt like the dog and pony show, kind of warm up the message, and that's what they were asked to do. Hey, don't talk, just sing.
I literally I was in a meeting one time and a senior pastor said, "Yeah, our worship leaders sing. No, they don't talk." Like
Right.
literally didn't want them to
And
say a word from the
to
stage.
a degree, I agree. But I do think that I have to teach people. And so I have to be afforded the trust to be able to do that. And there was some point where I sucked at it. But a pastor looked at me and says, "I need you to help me pastor in this way. I'm going to help you get better at it." And so I think that's at play too. And they just probably got tired of, "Hey, I'm going to sing a couple songs and play a weird cover song before the service begins. And there's got to be something deeper in my calling." And there is. And so I think it's a both and. I think pastors have to think more of their worship pastors and give more trust and expectation. And I think worship pastors have to think more of themselves.
So what does that look like for you when you say we need to lean more into the pastoral role of being a worship pastor? What does that look like practically?
I have to understand that we are better together. The hour is better together. So there is not a weekend.
75 minutes.
Sorry. That's hilarious, actually.
Never mind. Go ahead.
There isn't a weekend that goes by where I don't look at his notes before he gets up and preaches.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not trying to preach his message before he preaches it, but if I can lean the worship set that's already been planned for weeks in the direction I know he's going, subtly in terms of what am I highlighting as a theme that's emerging, we're going to move better together. I have to recognize day one that he's been called to lead this church, and so two visions create division. And so if I can't come under that vision and push that down to my team, we're already at a deficit. And so I think we have to teach worship pastors that they have a mantle and responsibility to think that way. And whether it's the worship or the senior pastor giving them the ability to do that, or they just need to be taught. And quite frankly, like you think about it, a growing church, we need great worship. And so those hustle days, you're just trying to find anybody that can carry a tune in a bucket and build a band and retain and attract great talent.
Been there.
But there has to be a day where we get back to the desk and we teach. And we say, "Hey, this is what it means to be a pastor. Who's the last person you took out for coffee who wasn't on your team, who could serve your vision, but actually you pastored them?" My wife and I could tell you about people that we've had stay at our house in the midst of losing their marriage because we're a pastor before I'm trying to fill a PCO invite. And so it has to be taught, and then we have to, with expectation, hire people with the understanding that this is what you're called to do. It just so happens that you're good musically so that you can pastor. And we'll get more into that too. I think the preparation and the attention to detail in your craft has to rise to a level, not so that I look good, but so that I can get up on a stage and not be flustered by anything technically, so that I can pastor. So that the good news, the gospel, can be clear and I'm not a distraction to it. So there's a lot of teaching that play. That's one of the things I feel called to in this decade of my life is like, and maybe longer, is how do I teach a younger generation who they are when they step into this calling?
So talking about that, because you mentioned like we find the singers, right? We find the talent. We aren't necessarily looking for the pastors when you're a small church, just trying to get someone up there that doesn't embarrass you, right? Like we understand that it's a real thing. Someone gets up there, sings out of tune. It's tough during a church service. So your advice to pastors who are trying to look for that role, right? Who are trying to find people to bring up into a pastoral role. We look for heart first. We look for talent first. We really have to look for both at the same time. And how do you develop that and balance that?
Yeah, so, we're at Lake Point now. That's a larger church, but it really wasn't that long ago. Like I was at a 70-person church plant. So I've been very much through the season of, hey man, I literally just need somebody who can sing a song this weekend. And I would just let some guys off the hook. Like, hey man, it's okay to be in that season. I would say it's okay to be in that season. I would say, to Chris's point, there were seasons of our church's life where I very intentionally would title a guy, this is our worship leader, and I intentionally did not use the term worship pastor because I wanted to be careful. The title redirects how people think about the person. And when we were in seasons where, hey man, this is a guy that I feel good enough about his character and his family and who he is as a man for him to be on stage, or else he wouldn't be on stage. I don't know him well enough to know if I want to point my whole church to that guy and say that's one of your pastors. I would just title him worship leader.
Yep.
There's some of the things that, like, when we got in, Chris is going to be able to answer this question better than me, but I can give a pastor's perspective. Some of the things that we were looking for is, man, is the biggest little death trap in hiring ever is you never ever bypass character for talent. It's always like that, is especially when it's like resources are thin, you're scrapping to try to, grow the thing. Like, the temptation is always to bypass character for talent. And I promise you that will blow up in your face. So don't do that. There's a reason that if you want to know, like, what's a quick way for me to get a little test of who a guy is, there's a reason that in Titus 1 and 1 Timothy 3 that almost half of the words about pastoral qualifications are about a guy's family. Man, like, Chris has great kids and Chris is a great dad. That tells me a lot about Chris. So it's like, just real quick, just check out a guy's family. What's that looking like? And then the other thing that I would say, especially from when I was in that season where it's like, hey man, you're trying to scale. Okay, we're a 200 person church. We're a 700, we're a 1,300 person church, whatever it is, man, we had a lot of times, we were in the Nashville area, so, it was not as hard as some other areas to find somebody who could play a guitar.
They're tripping down the street at that point. There's so many good musicians out there.
So, like, there was a lot of times where we'd be looking at 2 or 3 different guys, and the axiom that and this is one reason that he's special, the axiom that over time I developed internally was always bet on leadership. And what I mean by that is, like, man, this guy has an amazing, like, literally sometimes in Nashville, this guy was on season 3 of The Voice. And he can crush his song. But this guy actually can build and lead volunteer teams and And is his vocal as good as that guy? Nope, it's not. But over time, I just feel like the axiom always wins. Always bet on leadership. Those are 3 quick things. What would you add?
Yeah, we've all heard the phrase competency will get you in the door, character will keep you.
That's right.
I think the same is true in this hiring. I think when a pastor is in a place where it's like PJ said, dude, we need a worship leader. I think you can rush and forget that very natural and real law to be true. And so you can put somebody in a pretty high position just because you need a body and you need talent and you need to have it happen great every weekend, and kind of be tone deaf to maybe some of the character questions you have, thinking that that's going to fix itself over time. Don't rush that. I would rather, like he said, whether it's terming the person worship leader or even just contracting for a season that's a little longer than you're comfortable with, because you're going to get talent, and that will quickly run out. That will quickly be usurped by somebody who's more talented than that person. But the character will be the thing that keeps that person on your team for a long time. And don't forget, will attract like.
Yeah, that's right.
Like attracts like.
That's very
and
good.
so if it's like, we're kind of taking a gamble on the character thing and the ability to pastor, well, you're going to get more people just like him. And so, again, in a season where there may be desperation at play, you're just trying to make things work. I always encourage pastors, hey, dude, if you don't have a full team, but you got one amazing person on a keyboard and a vocal, do that for a season. Maybe it won't grow your church as exponentially fast as you want it to, but you won't have to pick up the wake of damage behind that leader eventually, because it's coming. And I think we're too short-sighted to forget that because it's coming. And so we just try to put talent. So I don't rush processes. Do not ignore flags in interviews. I've heard a leader say, hire slow, fire fast. So if a thing is a subtle blinking red light in an interview, it will be a loud alarm when that person's on your team.
That's good.
Don't ignore it.
Yeah, I'll add one last thing. He mentioned it earlier, and I just want to go over the verbal highlighter. Is, probably because of the prominence of the stage time, more than any other role in the church, I have found before here, more than any other role in the church, that's the one where there might be a temptation to want to have your own vision for what the weekend should look like instead of coming under the senior pastor's vision. So he was mentioning a second ago, hey man, I understand Josh is called to something I'm not, and my job is to come behind that and support it. And that's one reason that God blesses Chris's ministry. You got to make sure if you're hiring that role, you got to make sure that guy gets the spiritual dynamic of I'm coming under someone else's vision and anointing, and it's my job to submit to that. And if I can't, I need to stay away. I'll give one example of this with details omitted enough to protect the guilty. So when we were in Nashville, we hired a guy that came from a prominent place and had a prominent, a bit of a name for himself. And we came and 2 weeks in, I've told you this story.
Yeah. His name was Chris.
No, that's not true. That's not true. 2 weeks in, I'm like, bro, this is different. This is not what we talked about. Just some very interesting musical choices.
That's a funny phrase. This is not what we talked about.
This is not what we talked about. And so I was very clear. Another thing, when you're leading somebody, they deserve clarity from you. Clarity is kindness. Mm-hmm. It's impossible for people to hit a target you didn't draw for them. Mm-hmm. So literally it got to the spot where I felt like, man, it's not fair for me to expect this guy to hit a target. So I was like, here's what I'm gonna do. I told him, for the next 3 weeks, I'm not good at this, but I'm gonna give you, I think it was 10. I'm gonna give you 10 songs that I think are great for our church. They're theologically aligned and I like them. So in order to help us sync up, I'm just gonna give you songs, and any song you choose from these 10, totally good, man. And that was just not his vibe. So he picked a song the very next weekend that was not on our 10. Mm-hmm. And it was super weird. It's a weird song. And I
can you be more specific
about?
I
will not. No, okay. I won't. It was kind of like an indie folk vibe. Okay, that's all I'll do.
Okay.
So I called him in, and he'd only been there for 5 weeks, and I asked him hey man, gave him the songs, and he was like, well, one of the songs I'd originally chosen was a Chris Tomlin song, and I have an adopted daughter. I have 2 adopted daughters that are African American. This is literally what he said, and I can joke about it now. He said in my office, he said, you asking me to sing Chris Tomlin would be like me asking your daughters to quit being black. And I went, man, thank you for your last 5 weeks. You're done here. And I let him go after 5 weeks.
Wow.
But it was that's that thing of hey man.
Slow to hire, quick to fire.
Yes.
I was thank you for your time here. We have, you're done here, my friend. And, but that's that thing of hey man, make sure that person understands the spiritual dynamics of it's my job to come in under the leader. When you do that, God will bless you because that's how the kingdom works.
Yeah. The leadership, the relentless pursuit of leadership development in a worship department, I think that seems key to that high turnover rate that we're talking about. And I think it's difficult for a fast growing church to go from a church plant to scaling up to hundreds and thousands and then a staff of dozens of people, where everybody needs to be constantly kind of thinking how to get to that next level of leadership, and it can happen fast. I mean, even in our little organization for our team, I'm constantly having to seek development myself and for our key team members of how do you think to that kind of next layer of leadership, or if especially when you have org charts that start to form and things like that, because if that leadership isn't healthy, that's when people start to burn out. There's really bad systems, and it's just all downhill from there.
It's good, Jake.
So we see it a lot, and sadly, in I think a lot of those churches that are growing, which is a good thing, but that growing process can be nasty, especially when it comes to that dynamic. Another challenge a lot of churches face, I think they're going to increasingly face over time, is leadership succession and passing the baton from one generation to the next. So Lake Point has been around for 40, 50 years. It's not a young church, right? And then your guys is
46.
Yeah. Your involvement here has been 6 years,
6 years
almost
and
5.
Yeah.
5 years. So from at least from the outside perspective, it looks like that transition went well. It was a healthy one. What's your advice on churches where there might be a pastor listening to this who's thinking about the retirement and succession, and how do churches navigate that in a way that's going to be healthy, and then especially if the succession happens and then there is maybe rebuilding or staff turnover because things, when leaders change, things change.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a big question.
You got 10 minutes.
We don't have to. I'll do it shorter than that. I'll do maybe a couple things for the outgoing person and then a couple things for the ingoing person.
Yeah.
I think for the outgoing person, one thing, I always say this. So my predecessor's name was Pastor Steve Stroop, legend, spiritual father, incredible man. The success of this transition is 70% his doing and maybe 30% mine, especially in those like first 2 years, I'd say. So some things that Steve did that set Lake Point up to just keep rolling is Steve had a mantra that he made me a promise when I decided to bring my family here. Is he said, I'm going to leave my campground as clean as it was when I got here. So if there were any messes, whether that was organizational or personnel or sacred cows, Pastor Steve leveraged 40 years of his integrity and leadership credibility to lead through some things that would have done me in if I had to try to do those things the first 2 years. And as a result of that, I got to just take off and we got to build something, together. So number one, if you're the outgoing guy, man, the Lord, don't think you're just being put out to pasture. There may be a situation where you need to step away quickly. It's situational. But if you have the ability to leverage the credibility you've built up to solve some problems the new guy doesn't have the cred yet to solve, great will be a reward in the kingdom of heaven, I think. So I think that's one. I think for the incoming guy, I think it's a really big deal. Just because the succession at Lake Point has gone pretty good, we have a lot of succession pastors reach out, and now I coach a decent number of some of those guys. And what I will sometimes warn some of those guys is sometimes there can be a bit of an attitude that's unspoken, where they're in the transition season and the predecessor is still a little bit around, and there's maybe just a little bit of this thing in their spirit that's kind of like, get out of my way, old man. Mm-hmm. And I just, honestly, while I understand if you're a young leader with high vision and high velocity, dude, is it natural to maybe feel a little bit of that? That could be natural. But I don't think the Lord will bless that, because what you need to remember, I think about all of us walked in and it's like, dude, this is, okay, well, we are sitting in houses we did not build, harvesting from gardens we did not plant, in cities that we did not construct. Mm-hmm. Every day, me and Chris Cootie walk in and we sit in the success and the sacrifice of leaders who went before us for 40 or 41 years. And if you don't have the self-awareness and humility to honor that, then I have trouble seeing how the Lord is going to bless you. It's that psalm that how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell in unity. It's like anointing oil flowing down the beard is what it says. Mm-hmm. And I just think when you honor what's at the top, when you honor what's gone before you, then that anointing kind of flows downward. Mm. And so, to this day, like every chance I get to honor Pastor Steve without it being weird. Like there does come a moment where it's like, hey man, you need to let this be yours now. Some guys will kind of do it a little too long and hey man, it's yours now. Act like it's yours. But every chance I get to honor Pastor Steve and his family, for the sacrifices they made, I want to do that.
Yeah, I would say that adage of "I didn't build it" has to be front and center. There are people on my team today that I didn't recruit to be here, and so I have to live in a constant state of gratitude for that, recognizing that. And even if I was a part of starting this church, God's the one that builds His church, and so I'm just a steward. If I have that attitude coming in any transition, I'll be all the better for it. I think the other thing too is watch your pace in the first year. You have to have if you don't have a governor in your first year, you will blow through decisions that you probably could have waited 6 more months to make.
Yeah.
And by the way, made those decisions and changes with a lot more equity in your pocket.
Yep.
And so I think there's a lot of guys, because it's, I'm called to this now. If I don't, who will? I love this sentiment. But I used this analogy with you the other day. If Apple Maps doesn't first recognize where I am, the journey to my upcoming destination will be horrible. It first has to get a bearing on where am I starting from.
That's good.
And then it will chart the course.
That's really good.
You need time to just sit and watch the full calendar year. Again, this is not a permission to be passive in your first year, but you do have to be more observant than you are active. Understand more questions than you're giving answers for. And I think there's a lot of guys, because they have the title now or because this is theirs, they'll mistake sitting back and understanding as being passive, and it's not. It's actually the best path forward. And so there are some things that you've got to correct right away. God's going to give you the grace to understand what those things are. But the foolish thing for a worship pastor to do day one is completely change the song bank overnight. That's not wise. The worst thing to do is completely alter the team. Now, you may have some character things that you can't explain, and so the team on stage does look a little different. I'm not saying you pacify bad behavior, because you'll reap a bad culture, but try to see if that person can come up and elevate to your vision or standard. Don't just because they weren't your pick, push them off to the wayside, because the church is watching that, and you're cashing in equity at a deficit every time you make a decision like that. So be very wise.
If you're a worship leader or a pastor in that first year, I think that first year is about 2 things: win the stage and win the relationships. It's like you just be awesome on stage and win all the relationships.
Yep.
So much of what you guys just both kind of touched on, and I think so much of the conversation today is revolved around the concept of staying humble in the midst of wherever you are, whether you're a worship leader, whether you're a pastor taking over from someone else. What is as a leader who's on stage all the time on a relatively large stage? What is your humility North Star? How do you stay there and not let the numbers, the views, the followers get to your head at all?
In my humble yet very accurate opinion, I think, I'm just kidding. I think that what Pastor Josh says, you have to have a great wife
That's a big deal, man.
who puts wind in your sails, who believes in you,
It's a big deal.
but isn't impressed by you.
That's good.
And I think when you have a person like that in your life, it grounds you. And you need other people like that too, who I've got friends I can call that they can remind me, you didn't build any of this. I took a risk hiring you back when you were 20. And keep those people in your life. You're going to need them. And I think you also have to have those relationships around you and model it to your team that I don't have it figured out. I think the more you ask questions and are curious, I think that just keeps you grounded to understand that, even though the metrics may be up and to the right, I had something to do with it, because God's blessing the standard by which He has asked us to steward this thing, and He is bringing the wind that is blowing on this fire, but He started the fire. And so if I can constantly keep that in front of myself, and then I think the other thing too is I wish in my 30s and late 20s, I found more joy in other people getting the wins.
That's good, Chris.
Dude, I wanted to take all the shots in my 20s.
That's good, Cootie.
And I probably had the talent to do it. But somewhere along the way, God gave me the grace, and the thing I would hopefully deposit into a young leader is the quicker you can learn that lesson, that it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. That I know that analogy isn't the same, but I think it can be the same in this, is like, give that moment away and watch somebody do something even better. If you have more, I always try to tell worship pastors, hire more talented people than you. That room that you met today, I'd put everybody on that stage before me. Mm-hmm. Now, I know my place as the leader and what I'm called to, but I'm not afraid of them getting the spotlight. Mm-hmm. And the more people I can sense a leader's humility by the team they hire. Mm-hmm. The ones that are insecure, prideful will get a bunch of people who just, they're not better than the leader. But the ones that I'm like, I don't need to learn from that guy, go see how good his team is. And when you are constantly bringing people who could do it better than you, that'll keep you in a grounded place.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed most of that. That's somebody told. Actually, I think it was like Dave Stone. He's Southeast Christian. I think Dave Stone told me one time. He was like, don't let praise go to your head, and don't let criticism go to your heart. And I think that's really, really helpful. I do think that. It's weird. I don't know if you feel the same way, but at least for me, it's probably got different wirings. People a lot of times like, man, hope you're staying humble. Hope you're staying humble. And man, that is really important. And I'm sure there are some times where it's like, man, I need to crucify that thing of me. My bigger struggle is staying confident. And it's very, very rare. It's really interesting. I've never had somebody grab me in the lobby and be like, man, I hope you're staying confident. Never. I've never had that. So, it is, there's, for every 1 mile road, there's 2 miles of ditch. And sometimes people will they're only looking out for that one when it's like that, the Lord needs a confident in him leader. But to what Chris said, I think it's your relationships, man. It's, if you got friends that are genuinely friends and, you're just Chris or you just Josh to them, that's a really healthy place to be. Mm-hmm.
I listened to your Resurge podcast, and a topic you've brought up, the negative world concept by Aaron Wren, who wrote that essay on this cultural model. And for those that aren't familiar with it, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but over the past few decades, we shift from a positive world where the church or being Christian just had a much more kind of positive impact on maybe the way the world outside the church viewed us being Christians. And then it kind of shifted to more neutral, where it's like, kind of neutral, could be good, could be bad in certain situations. And then now today, I think he says since about 2014 to today, the default posture the world takes towards the church is quite negative one. I would love to hear more of your perspective of how that applies to technology use in the church, how the church allocates its funds and resources towards the amazing AV systems we got to tour today and things like that. When we live in this world because we're visiting churches all the time, we're installing it ourselves. That's probably the most common, what I think is a symptom of negative world feedback that we'll see. We'll post a video and people are like, tax the church. Those funds could have been given to those. They could have been given to the poor.
Was that your video?
Went viral. Thanks, Blaine.
Right. These clips. Honestly,
Thanks, John Chris. For
today, I literally.
Did you see that? So Blaine posted a clip. It was awesome.
The one on John Christ?
Yeah, the one on John Christ. That was us.
Yeah.
That was us. He just posted of our what do we call that room up there?
Our broadcast suite, video suite.
Yeah. It was like went totally viral.
Yeah.
And then John Chris did like a react video to it. Like 30 people did react videos to it.
Yeah.
But to your point, negative world, everyone approaches churches with cynicism.
Yeah.
And the bigger you are, the more cynical they are.
Yeah.
So that's like, you got to be, to the Apple Maps analogy, you got to know where you are. And then you got to move out from there. So that's a thing.
So what's your advice for us? Because we're the church AV guys, and maybe this is more of a counseling therapy for us, dealing with all the hate and stuff. But yeah, it's
personal opinion.
Yeah,
I think I'd love to know if you guys agree, disagree, additional comments. Personal opinion, I think loudest boos come from the cheapest seats.
Yeah.
I think the contingent of people who see a video like Blaine's video over here.
Thanks, Blaine.
Follow
Blaine.
And they're like...
Blaine is actually cutting this video right now for us. Great job, Blaine.
I think the percentage of people who see that and like, hate it is really small but really loud.
Yeah.
And that person wasn't coming to your church anyway. Mm-hmm. So honestly, man, I think it's probably a little overblown as far as how serious that is. Now, I'm kind of careful on stuff that, that I'll post. I kind of have that in mind. Over time, you kind of learn like, oh, that's the landmine. Oh, that's the landmine. And, so
Jake likes to step directly onto the
Me
landmines.
too,
Sometimes.
The rest of the team is like, oh, he didn't suppose that.
Discover landmines by stepping on them. That's a... I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
You actually probably heard it on that Resurge podcast. Every now and then, I'll find spots to explain. I've done it. I think I've done it on our Live Free podcast for our church before. Like just to help people get their head around big church stuff, I'll drop into sermons like little diffusing concepts. Like I'll anticipate negative world, big church cynicism, and I'll diffuse the cynicism in a sermon. Like for instance, these guys have heard, I do this at least once a year. People talk about, Lake Point is, 25,000 people. You're just all about the numbers, all about the numbers, all about the numbers. And I'll just say that in a sermon. And I'll say, yep, absolutely we are. We are all about the numbers of addicts getting freed, of orphans getting adopted, of marriages getting restored. We are all about the numbers of people getting saved. And I'll just go right at it. Well, what I'm doing there is I'm anticipating the negative world cynicism thing. And then let me acknowledge it. And when you name the demon, it removes a measure of power from it. And then you diffuse it. So like even with the production thing, I've done this in the Live Free pod, where I'll explain to people, to our church, like there's concepts and business dudes get it. As soon as, in fact, when they hear you say it, business guys in your church are like, oh, that guy's smart. He knows how to think. Like big church and multi-site, there's organizational concepts like economy of scale and cost per use. So like I know this sounds weird, and I'm in no way am I making a value judgment on size of churches. In fact, I just want to point this out. Who is it in the Bible that looks at the expenditure of things that were spent on bringing glory, honor, and attention to Jesus and says,
Judas.
This money should have been spent on the poor? Yeah. Judas.
Yeah.
There's only one dude in the Bible that does that. It's Judas. So if you find yourself on Team Judas, get a different team. So like if you start noticing, dang, I'm saying the stuff Judas said, that's like not a great warning sign.
The J in WWJD does not stand for Judas.
I'm gonna start handing people, hey, here's your bracelet.
Yeah.
You get the
Here's your
WWJD, the Judas.
Somebody
bracelet.
thought my middle son's name when I introduced them that his name was Judas. His name's Judah. And I was like, do I not accentuate my consonants very well? I'm so sorry.
Here's my other kid, Ahab and Jezebel. I keep going in circles. What I'll do sometimes for our church is I've explained at Live Free is with the economy of scale and cost per use, we spend a way less percentage of our budget on things like production and technology than my church did when we were 75 people.
Yeah.
So if you just go by percentage, we spend way less on production and technology. I want to say that one more time than my church plant did at 75 people. Yeah. So again, it's just you're thinking an economy of scale. But anyway, I'll explain that to people, and sometimes when people have a little hang up, they'll hear it and they'll go, "Oh, that totally makes sense," and they feel great.
Yeah. People don't like math generally, though.
No, usually what people do
it.
is they're not actually looking for an answer. They're looking for data to reinforce the thing they already hate.
Yeah.
And some of it's based on a very real wound, but oftentimes this is not that.
Yeah.
Like I think that
I think a very, very small part of it is based on a real wound. But But he's being more gracious than me.
Yeah, I think that the couple things that I try to think about, and first, it's easy to cast judgment based on a context you have no idea of what's happening. But when you get close to things, like if you knew the amount of times Pastor Josh asked questions about what's the right thing to do, not like what's the most even cost-effective thing to do. That's a part of it, but like what's the right thing? Like a leader who doesn't care about the financial integrity of his church doesn't ask those questions of his leaders. A leader who doesn't care about the financial integrity of his church will just buy the PA without getting 5 other quotes. So if you knew the scrutiny that happened inside, you probably wouldn't have the perspective, which I understand you may not have. But just because you don't have it doesn't mean that everything is that. Meaning, that they're just spending a god-awful amount of money on all that. The other thing I would say is, this is not 2004.
Yeah, that's good, Chris.
I toured full-time for a part of my life, and I remember trying to get a 7mm wall cost so much.
Yeah.
The scale and the cost now for things that back even in the early 2000s looked like you spent an arm and a leg on, we have fixtures now that are pennies on the dollar of what they used to because the technology has increased. But people that don't live in that world don't understand, a 4K camera doesn't cost as much as it used to when that technology was brand new. And so again, if you knew the amount of meetings we were in of like, do we need to fully transition to that technology, or can we wait for it to become more cost effective for our usage? So I just think there's so much happening, and I'm just thankful that we're not afraid to use these tools to reach people. We're also not afraid to cut a tool if it's us serving the tool. If it's putting us, like we're being very cost effective for the scale that we are. That's a poor way of explaining what he already said. But I think the way that those things are being scrutinized, just be careful to cast judgment that you have no idea about the context.
Well, it's helpful. Because I think what I get concerned that sometimes church leaders hear that negative world feedback on these things, and it is very loud, and that just also prevents them from thinking big about what's possible. Sometimes underestimating, that the church actually could find ways to have the resources to invest into better infrastructure for things, and it just again, the noises and the loudness of the haters can sometimes just like hold people back from just thinking bigger and dreaming bigger for what's possible.
I think 2 other rules of thumb for me too is like when you read about the tabernacle.
Yeah.
Dude, the cost of goods in the tabernacle.
Yes.
Now again, God prescribed those exact things. He did not prescribe what console we're going to use in front of house.
Yep.
In the Old Testament law, I can't find it. He would probably say, "Did you?" But I think that's something to note. Like when we're stewarding the presence of God, we should not come to it haphazardly, but with intention and our best foot forward. And some of these things are tools to incite or to bring or make clear the gospel of Jesus.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah.
And so if a tool can become a barrier to that being clear, I'm going to spend more dollars on making sure that thing doesn't crash in the middle of the message, and therefore cost attention of those listening. So I think that's another great thing to remember is,
you got to do it with wisdom. So there's limitations on this analogy, but the best message deserves the best presentation.
Yeah. Yep. What project are you guys most excited about right now? Each of you might have a different project you're working on or initiative, but start with you, Chris, and then end with you, Josh.
When I look up, I'm excited about the kids, my middle school, my 6th grade son's age, one day becoming the leaders in this church.
Amen.
And I'm excited about the way in which we're going to help those leaders develop. And so we're really praying through and asking the question, God, who's right in front of us? And that person is next up. So leadership development pipeline, all those things from a worship perspective. I can't wait for a day where I don't have to post a job opening, but that person is here.
That's cool.
And so we're trying to build that one day at a time.
Josh?
Man, we're in a pretty unique season, like momentum wise. So one is just figuring out how to scale, and that's fun. That's like fun for me. But as far as like a project, the thing that we're saying a lot right now is I heard, and again, this person will remain nameless and no shade. Sometimes you're just saying something. But I was at a church leadership conference years ago, and a well-known leader made the comment, "We're in the events business. Hey, churches are in the events business." And I understand maybe what he was trying to say, but I just want to constantly be really clear. No, we're not. We're not in the events business. We're in the disciple business. We're not in the view counts business. We're not in the crowd business. We're in the disciple business. So everything that we do, I'm like, how do we leverage that to make good disciples, build strong families? So we've got some momentum right now. With the podcast that we've been doing, not everybody should do that. There's a whole little concept behind who should and shouldn't do that, but some of that is size scale specific. But that's really working for us, I think, and it's resulting in people moving into discipleship relationships that are kind of funneled even through the sermon and the deeper dive Bible teaching from the podcast. And I really feel like there's something there that if we vertically align the offerings correctly and then stack them in an efficient, good UI delivery mechanism, that we can really catalyze discipleship at scale for our people and move a considerably higher number of people into real ground war discipleship. And I'm very excited about that.
UI is in like software?
Yeah, this is, we'll roll it out. So it's not like super public, but like what we want to do is every church got an app. It's like developing an app is not rocket science or, this is groundbreaking, Yeah. But I do think if
an app that people actually use is groundbreaking.
That's rare. That's very rare. I do think that there's some things that we can do that would involve maybe some creative uses with an app that was specifically designed to vertically align our sermon, the deeper dive podcast, a vertically aligned, so an aligned Bible reading plan that all aligned towards the groups that are already sort of spontaneously popping up. I really think we can pour gasoline on something that's already got momentum and catalyze discipleship at scale, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for your time today.
Hey, can I close this? So
yeah.
So I asked Grok, talk to me like a 5-year-old and explain color science. And this is what
this is a lesson in great communication. You start and then you go around the loop and you wrap where you begin.
You wrap where you started.
I'm only going to read the beginning. This is great. It says, "Okay, little buddy." Wait, it gets better. "Okay, little buddy. Let's talk about colors in a super fun way with a rainbow emoji. That's not gay. It's just a rainbow."
Great clarity.
Colors are like magic paints that make everything pretty, like rainbows, flowers, and your favorite toys. Let me tell you how colors work in a way that's easy peasy.
Wow. Color science. There you go.
We should have specified about like camera color science.
Oh, is that? I don't know.
That's what we're talking about. But no, I get Grok is amazing.
The lesson, AI is only as good as the prompt.
I don't know what color science is. I thought it did great.
Little buddy.
Okay, little buddy.
Okay. Wow, little buddy.
Yeah. Do your Mickey Mouse.
Oh boy. Wow, hot dog.
Do a Russian mob guy.
Have a very nice color science. Have lots of color science for the...
Dude, this guy's the best.
Okay,
like, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.
That was a good sign off.
Ring bell for notification.